The void smelled of cold iron and forgotten memories. That was what Noah Hart always thought when the plasma storms kicked up, lashing the outer hull of Depot Saffron with spectral green fire. From his narrow viewport in the station's galley, the universe was not a majestic spread of nebulae. It was a cosmic junkyard, an endless ring of debris and shattered hulls, tumbling just beyond the station's flickering shields. Depot Saffron was the last, rusted-out tooth in the mouth of the Eastern Galactic Contact. It was a place where ships came to get patched, refueled, or forgotten. Mostly forgotten. Traffic had been sparse for 3 standard cycles, and the station itself felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the final systems failure that would turn it into just another piece of junk in the belt. This suited Noah. He was, by trade, a culinary biologist, a graduate of Earth's most exclusive gastronomic academies. He had once been a minor celebrity, the chef who could engineer a synthetic protein to taste like a childhood memory. He had designed state dinners for interstellar diplomats, weaving peace treaties with enzyme chains and flavor profiles. He had been happy. He had been engaged to Alara. Now, he was just Noah, the station's mess cook and part-time recycler mechanic. He wiped grease from nutrient synthesizers and coaxed aging reclaimers back to life. He preferred the company of failing machinery to the hollow pleasantries of the human crews that passed through. The machines did not ask questions. They did not offer sympathy. The hum of the station's primary ventilator was his only companion. It was a low, mournful sound, a constant reminder of the recycled air he breathed, thin and metallic. He ran a hand over his tired face, the rough stubble scratching his palm. Guilt was a physical weight, a cold spot in his chest that never warmed. The saffron debris field was a fitting purgatory. He deserved this cold. He deserved this isolation. Alara had died in fire, not cold. The Cora Prime Space Bridge incident. That was the official consortium report. An incident. A catastrophic structural failure. But Noah knew. He knew the consortium cut corners, that their alloys were substandard, that their safety protocols were a joke written by accountants. His fiancée, a brilliant civil engineer on that very bridge, had been vaporized along with 3,000 other souls because the consortium wanted to save 0.5% on structural costs. His grief had soured into a quiet rage, and that rage had curdled into this, a self-imposed exile. He had fled his life, his career, his planet, all to end up here, cooking nutrient paste for freighter crews who did not care what they ate, as long as it was hot. A tinny, slightly warped voice crackled through the galley's internal speaker. Dock matron to galley. No new arrivals scheduled for the next 72 hours. Plasma storm intensity increased 12%. Maintain standard energy protocols. Acknowledged. Matron, Noah said to the empty room. The station's AI administrator, Doc Matron, was as old and tired as the hull she managed. Her logic circuits were frayed, her voice synthesizer clinging to a mid-century synthetic accent that was probably charming 50 years ago. Now, it was just sad. 72 more hours of solitude. Good. He turned his attention back to his personal project. In the center of his spotless steel counter sat a small, humming bioforge. He was not making nutrient paste tonight. He was experimenting. He was trying to recreate a flavor from Earth. A simple street food grilled rice cakes with a sweet, smoky honey glaze. The challenge was not the rice. Synthesized carbohydrates were simple. The honey was the problem. True bee-produced honey was a luxury item, costing thousands of credits per ounce. He was trying to engineer the flavor from metabolized fungal proteins and a complex strand of synthesized glucose. He had been working on it for weeks. It was a stupid, pointless exercise. But it was his. It was the last remaining thread of the man he once was. He adjusted a micron-level enzyme injector, adding a molecule of engineered smoke to the bubbling amber liquid. The scent that rose was warm, sweet, and comforting. It was the smell of home, a place he could never return to. That was when he heard it. It was not a station sound, not the groan of stressed metal or the hum of the scrubbers. It was a scratch, a faint, desperate scratching coming from the bulkhead of his dry goods storage lock. Noah froze. His blood ran cold, a familiar jolt of adrenaline that always preceded disaster. Void crawlers. The station had been swept for them last month, but the plasma storms could drive them in. Or worse, a scavenger droid from a derelict ship, its logic corrupted, looking for spare parts. He grabbed a heavy, metal-sheathed thermal pipe from the mechanic's kit he kept under the sink. He held it like a club, his heart hammering against his ribs. He stalked silently across the galley floor, his rubber-soled boots making no sound. The scratching came again, more insistent this time. It was low to the floor. He reached the storage lock's manual release. He took a deep breath, the air tasting like ozone, and his own fear. He braced himself and yanked the lever. The heavy door hissed open on its pneumatic joint. There was no monster, no corrupted droid. Instead, 4 pairs of very large, luminous eyes stared up at him from the shadowy corridor. He stood there, thermal pipe raised, staring at the children. They were small, painfully thin, and trembling violently, not just from the cold of the unheated corridor, but from sheer terror. They were Kitsari. He had only seen Kitsari in news feeds. They were a reclusive, ancient species from the Mother Star Dominion, a cluster of systems shrouded in stellar nurseries and strict theocratic law. They were known for their intelligence, secretive nature, and unique biology. Pointed, fox-like ears, sharp vulpine faces, and tails. Not fur, but delicate, shimmering filaments that looked like captured light. The news feeds called them fiber optic tethers, rumored to let them sense the music of the stars. These children, however, looked less like celestial beings and more like drowned rats. Their tattered, simple tunics were soaked. The shimmering filaments of their tails were dull, matted with grime, and in some places, broken. The 4 of them were huddled together for warmth, a miserable pile of shivering limbs and huge, terrified eyes. The smallest one, a female by the look of her, had her face buried in the shoulder of a slightly larger male, who was trying to shield her with his own bony frame. Noah slowly lowered the pipe. "Hello," he said. His voice sounded too loud, too rough in the quiet. The children flinched. The largest one, who looked to be the leader, stepped forward. He was maybe the equivalent of a human 8-year-old. His ears were flat against his skull in a clear sign of aggression, or fear. Probably both. "We mean no harm," the boy said. His voice was a high-pitched, reedy whisper, but his command of galactic standard was perfect. He held his ground, though Noah could see his knees shaking. "Where did you come from?" Noah asked, his mind racing. There were no Kitsari registered on the station. No Dominion ships had docked here in over a year. To bring them in, he would have to call Dock Matron, who would have to call the Port Authority, who would have to call the consortium patrol that was inevitably lurking somewhere in this sector. "We hid," the boy said. "The storage crate. It was cold." Noah looked past them into the corridor. He saw a trail of damp footprints, leading from a ventilation grate that serviced the outer hull's cargo bays. They had snuck in from an unlisted ship. The smallest, a woman, raised her head. Her tiny, black nose twitched. She looked past the boy, her gaze fixing on the bioforge in Noah's kitchen. "It's warm," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "And it smells sweet." Noah's gaze followed hers. The rice honey cakes. The scent had drawn them out of the vents. Their sensitive olfactory glands must have picked it up, even through the sealed bulkhead. "You're hungry," Noah stated. It was not a question. The boy's facade of bravery crumpled. He nodded, his ears drooping. "Please," he said. "We have not eaten for a while. Pebble is sick." The child he indicated, another male, was leaning heavily against the wall. He was pale, his breathing shallow. Noah's training, the deep-seated instinct to nurture, to feed, kicked in, overriding years of self-imposed isolation. He stepped back and widened the door. "Get in," he said, his voice softer. "All of you. Now." They darted in, a blur of small, fast bodies, moving with an unnerving, silent grace. They bypassed him, heading straight for the warmth of the galley's core, clustering near the humming synthesizer, like moths to a flame. Noah sealed the door, his mind working fast. The station protocol was clear. Unregistered biologicals, especially children, required immediate quarantine and reporting. It was Regulation 42, subsection C. Breaking it meant stiff fines, loss of his license, possibly arrest. He looked at the 4 shivering children. He looked at the pale one, Pebble, who was now sinking to the floor. Noah sighed. To hell with Regulation 42. He went to his locker and pulled out 4 thermal weave blankets. He tossed them to the small group. "Wrap up and sit down, over there." He pointed to a small alcove where he usually ate his own meals. They obeyed instantly, disappearing into the heavy gray blankets until only their large eyes and pointed ears were visible. "Names," he said, pulling a scanner from his belt. It was a standard-issue biomonitor. "I am Flicker," the leader said. He in turn pointed to others. "This is my sister, Cinder. Our brothers, Pebble and Dawn." Dawn was the smallest, the one who had smelled the honey. She peered at him from her blanket, her curiosity seeming to outweigh her fear. "I'm Noah. Stay still." He ran the scanner over Pebble first. The readings made his stomach clench. Severe malnutrition, hypothermia, and something else. A faint energy reading he did not recognize, fluctuating wildly. The boy's heart rate was erratic, thumping in a strange, syncopated rhythm. It was, Noah thought, almost as if it were trying to match the rhythm of the plasma storm raging outside. He scanned the others. They were all in bad shape, but Pebble was the worst. "Your mother," Noah said, trying to sound casual as he analyzed the scanner data. "Where is she?" "She is coming," Flicker said with absolute certainty. "She told us to wait for her, and she said, 'Do not tell the station.'" "Don't tell the station," Noah repeated, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Of course she did. And how, exactly, is she coming?" "On a ship." "She is Mother," Cinder whispered, her voice a perfect, haunting echo of Flicker's. "She will find us." Great. Cryptic. He was hiding unregistered, undocumented, half-starved alien children who were waiting for a mother who might or might not exist. His life, which had been a quiet study in gray monotony, had just become extraordinarily complicated. "Right," he said, shelving the questions for later. First things first, food. He could not give them standard nutrient paste. His scanner had shown their biology was delicate. Kitsari biochemistry was notoriously complex, hypersensitive to synthesized proteins and common allergens. One wrong ingredient could send them into anaphylactic shock. This was no job for a mess cook. This was a job for a culinary biologist. He turned to his lab station. He pulled down vials of purified starches, hypoallergenic protein isolates, and a rack of synthesized enzymes. He took a sample of the rice honey cake he had been working on. The scanner confirmed its base components were safe. Simple carbohydrates, sugars. They needed calories, fast, but they also needed more. He looked at the scanner, reading for Pebble. The boy's mineral levels were depleted. He was suffering from what the old medical texts called starfield deprivation. Their biology was tied to the cosmos, and the shielded, artificial environment of a ship, followed by the cold vents of the station, was killing them. They needed trace minerals, specifically lumen salts. He had a small, hideously expensive vial of lumen salt, salvaged from a derelict luxury liner's medical bay. He used it as a seasoning for the most high-end, demanding clients. Back when he had clients, he measured 4 tiny pinches, one for each. Now, the flavor. The honey smoke was good, but Kitsari palates were particular. He remembered a lecture from the academy. They craved complex, layered flavors. They had a preference for a specific type of heat, not from capsaicin, but from a compound that stimulated their thermal receptors on a quantum level. He accessed his enzyme library. He found what he was looking for: a dormant enzyme, K-series 17. When introduced to a specific sugar chain, it would restructure the compound, creating a gentle, warming spice, perfectly attuned to Kitsari biology. It would not taste hot to a human, but to them, it would feel like drinking sunlight. He worked with a speed and precision he had not used in years. His hands, usually stained with hydraulic fluid, moved with the grace of a surgeon. He blended the starches, isolates, salts, and the enzyme into the warm honeycake base, creating a thick, fragrant, golden brown batter. He poured it into 4 small, thermally activated molds, which cooked the snacks in less than 30 seconds. He slid the 4 steaming, perfectly formed cakes onto a tray. The smell was incredible. Warm, sweet, with a hint of that engineered smoke and a faint, unidentifiable tang that was the enzyme. He carried the tray to the alcove. 4 pairs of eyes tracked him. "All right," he said. "This is a specialized hypoallergenic formula. It's safe. Eat slowly." He handed the first cake to Pebble. The boy's small, 3-fingered hand emerged from the blanket. He took the cake, his fingers trembling. He sniffed it, his black nose twitching. Then he took a tiny bite. His eyes, which had been dull and listless, widened. A faint, shuddering sigh escaped him. The end of his matted tail gave a single, weak twitch, and a speck of blue light, like a dying ember, sparked at its tip. He devoured the rest of the cake in 2 more bites. Noah handed the other 3 cakes. They were eaten just as quickly. Silence descended on the galley, broken only by the sound of the ventilator and the distant crackle of the plasma storm. Dawn, the smallest, was the first to speak. She looked up at him, a smear of golden batter on her cheek. "More," she said. "Pardon." "We require 5 more portions each," Flicker said, his voice suddenly much stronger. He had his blanket wrapped around his shoulders like a royal cloak. "For diplomatic courtesy." Noah stared at him. The kid had just been half frozen in a ventilation shaft, and now he was negotiating. He could not help it. A small, rusty laugh escaped him. It was the first time he had laughed, and he could not remember how long. "Diplomatic courtesy," Noah said, crossing his arms. "Last I checked, diplomacy wasn't armed robbery, and you're not armed." "We are," Flicker said, his small face serious. "We are very hungry." Noah chuckled again, shaking his head. "1 more each, and then you tell me exactly what you're running from." He returned to his station to mix another batch. The warmth from the bioforge felt good. The galley, which had been his tomb, suddenly felt inhabited. It was a strange, unsettling, and not entirely unpleasant feeling. He was pouring the second batch into the molds when the entire station vibrated. It was not a storm. This was a low, powerful thrum that rattled the vials in his lab. It was the unmistakable signature of a heavy ship's engines, engaging the station's mooring clamps. A red light flashed on his console. An unauthorized ship. No. A priority docking. Doc Matron to all station personnel. The AI's tinny voice crackled, this time with a new layer of static. Consortium Patrol Vessel Argent has taken priority docking at Bay 3. Security teams to muster. All non-essential personnel, remain at your posts. Noah's blood turned to ice. The mixing bowl slipped from his hand and crashed to the floor, spattering golden batter across the steel deck. The Consortium. Here. Flicker was on his feet instantly. What is it? What's wrong? They're here for us, Cinder whispered, her eyes wide with a new, fresh terror. She had begun to tremble again, and it had nothing to do with the cold. Get back in the alcove, Noah snapped, his voice a harsh whisper. All of you, be quiet. Do not move. Do not make a sound. He ran to the galley door and locked it. He hit the switch to darken the viewport. He was breathing hard, the old, familiar panic closing its icy hand around his heart. The Consortium. The same corporate entity that had murdered his fiancée. His console chimed with an incoming station-wide message. It was not from Doc Matron. It was a general broadcast from the Consortium vessel. A face appeared on his screen. A man, sharp-featured and immaculate in a black Consortium uniform. His eyes were the color of a frozen lake. His name was printed below his image, Archon Morrow, Special Acquisitions. Attention, residents of Depot Saffron. Morrow's voice was smooth, cultured, and utterly devoid of warmth. By the authority of the Interstellar Commerce Charter, this station is under temporary lockdown. We are conducting a search for stolen corporate assets. Specifically, 4 units of high-value, non-human biologicals. Failure to cooperate will be met with extreme prejudice. That is all. The screen went blank. 4 units. High-value biologicals. Noah turned to look at the 4 small, blanket-wrapped figures huddled in the alcove, their faces pale with terror. Stolen assets. The man who had just appeared on his screen, the man who represented the organization that had destroyed his life, was here. And he was hunting these children. Noah looked at the locked door. He looked at the trembling children. He felt the thermal pipe still clutched in his right hand. His exile was over. The galley door felt 1,000 miles away. Noah's breath hitched, trapped in his chest. Stolen assets. High-value biologicals. Flicker's voice was a sharp pinprick in the sudden, roaring silence of Noah's panic. He means us, doesn't he, the black suit man? Shut up, Noah commanded, not in anger, but in sheer, cold focus. The numbness of his self-imposed exile shattered, replaced by a white-hot, needle-sharp adrenaline he had not felt since the day he learned of Alara's death. Not another word, all of you. Blankets. Leave them. But it's cold, Pebble whimpered, his small body already shaking. It's about to get a lot colder, Noah said. He crossed the galley in 3 long strides and hauled open the door to the heavy-duty reclamation chute. It was meant for industrial-sized nutrient canisters and biological waste. A greasy, dark maw that led down to the station's recycling core. He pointed. In, now. We will not travel in filth, Flicker stated, his small chin held high. Noah grabbed the young Kitsari by the front of his tunic, his face inches from the boy's. Listen to me, and listen very carefully. The black suit man is from the Consortium. They don't want to rescue you. They want to acquire you. They call you units. Do you know what they do with units they can't control? They scrap them. Now, you can be proud in the chute, or you can be scrapped in my kitchen. Your choice. Flicker's bravado broke. He nodded, his large eyes wide and dark. He turned and pushed his siblings toward the chute. Go. Cinder, take Don's hand. They scrambled in, their small, clawed feet scratching on the metal. Noah shoved the thermal pipe into his belt and climbed in after them, pulling the hatch closed from the inside. The world went black, and the smell of ozone and rancid protein leachings filled his lungs. He hit the manual slide release. The journey was a nauseating, jolting fall, a series of short drops and rattling slides through the station's dark intestines. He used his own body as a brake, shielding the children from the worst of the impacts. They landed, one after another, in a heap on a pile of damp filtration foam in a dimly lit maintenance corridor. "This way," Noah ordered, pulling them to their feet. He ignored their whimpers. He knew these access tunnels better than anyone. He was the one who repaired the machines they serviced. He led them through a maze of humming conduits and steaming pipes, his ears straining for the sound of booted feet. His destination was Cold Storage 3. It was a relic, a walk-in freezer from the station's early days, long since decommissioned. Its cooling systems were shot, and its seal was faulty. It was useless to the station. To him, it was perfect. It was isolated, off the main schematics, and, most importantly, right next to a primary thermal exhaust vent. He keyed in the override code on the rusting panel. The door hissed open, releasing a cloud of stale, cold air. "Inside," he said. The children huddled together, staring into the dark, metal-shelved room. "It is a cage," Cinder whispered, her voice trembling. "It's a nest," Noah countered. He pushed them gently inside and sealed the door. For a moment, they were in absolute darkness. The only sound, the faint, panicked breathing of the four children. Then, Noah's tool light flashed on, a bright, sterile beam that illuminated their terrified faces. "We wait here," he said. "We will freeze," Flicker said, his teeth chattering. "No, you won't." Noah went to the back wall. He tore open a panel, exposing a bundle of thick, insulated cables. He pulled a portable induction heater from his mechanic's kit, a small, flat disc he used for flash-thawing frozen pipes. He clamped it to the main power conduit, jury-rigging a connection. With a soft whoomp, the disc glowed a dull, cherry red. A pathetic, but immediate, wave of warmth began to pulse into the small room. It was not enough. The metal walls were leaching the heat as fast as he could make it. "The blankets," he muttered, angry at his own oversight. He looked around. His eyes landed on the shelves, which were lined with crumbling, foil-backed insulation pads, remnants of a long-failed repair. Perfect! For the next hour, he worked like a man possessed. He stripped the insulation from the shelves and, using a thermal adhesive from his kit, began lining the walls, creating a crude, silver-lined den in the back corner of the freezer. He tore up the station's rotting floor panels to build a raised platform, getting them off the freezing metal deck. The children watched him, their initial terror fading into a stunned, silent curiosity. He was not a cook. He was not a savior. He was a force of nature, a whirlwind of desperate, practical energy. When he was finished, it was a definite improvement. The small, enclosed space, lined with foil and heated by the glowing disc, was becoming almost warm. He herded them into the new nest. "This is your home now," he said, his voice flat. He sat back on his heels, the adrenaline finally ebbing, leaving him exhausted. "You do not leave. You do not make a sound. I'm the only one opening that door. Understood?" They nodded, a chorus of small, frightened faces. Pebble had crawled immediately to the induction heater, pressing his small hands as close as he dared, soaking in the warmth. Noah turned his attention back to the boy. Now that the immediate crisis was over, the biologist in him took charge. He pulled out his bioscanner again. The news was not good. "You're sicker than I thought," he murmured, analyzing the readings. The boy's cellular regeneration was sluggish. Starfield malnutrition. That's what the old texts called it. He looked at Pebble's tail. The few remaining tethers of light that had sparked when he ate were gone. The filaments were dull, lifeless. "Your tails," Noah said, pointing his scanner. They're receptors, aren't they? For stellar radiation? You feed on it, in a way. Flicker nodded. We drink the solar wind. We listen to Mother's song. But here the song is weak, and the wind is wrong. Noah looked at his scanner. Flicker was right. The boy's heart rhythm was completely out of sync with the station's chronometer, but it was almost perfectly aligned with the fluctuating pulse of the plasma storm raging outside. They were not just sensitive to the stars. They were part of them. This station's shields, Noah realized, they're not just keeping the storm out. They're starving you. He checked his own supplies. He had that small vial of lumen salt. He opened it. There were perhaps 3, maybe 4 more doses in it. A temporary fix. It would stabilize them. But it would not cure them. He needed more. A lot more. And it was one of the rarest, most controlled substances in the galaxy. He was deep in his analysis when his personal comlink, patched into the station's security feed, chirped. He opened the channel. It was a video feed from the main concourse. Archon Morrow was there, flanked by 6 consortium guards in matte black, non-reflective armor. They moved with the silent, brutal efficiency of corporate soldiers. But it was not the guards that held Noah's attention. It was the AI's interface. Morrow was not just using Doc Matron's hub. He had physically jacked his own console into her core programming. He was bypassing her, giving commands directly to the station's hardware. Isolate all unregistered heat signatures. Morrow's voice was a calm, cold scalpel. I want thermal scans of every sector, every maintenance shaft, every cargo hold. Cross-reference with the station's registered life sign manifest. Anything that is not on that list. I want it flagged. I want a team at its location in 5 minutes. Acknowledged, Doc Matron's voice responded. But it was wrong. It was tinny, looping, and had a mechanical stutter. Acknowledged ledged, scanning for unauthorized heat signatures. He's poisoned her, Noah whispered, horrified. He's injected a logic worm. He has control of the station. As if to prove his point, a camera high in the corner of the cold storage room. A camera Noah had assumed was dead for 20 years. Suddenly swiveled. A tiny red light at its center blinked on. It was scanning. Noah reacted instantly. He threw his own heavy mechanic's jacket over the induction heater, shrouding its bright red glow. The room was plunged back into near darkness, the only light from his tool lamp. What are you doing? Dawn cried, her voice sharp with fear. It's cold again. Quiet, Noah hissed. He grabbed the scanner and pointed it at the children. Their collective body heat, huddled together, was minimal, but it was there. A faint, 4-lobed warm spot on a cold background. It would not be enough to trigger an alert yet, but the induction heater was a blazing beacon. Stay here, he said. He moved to the door. I have to go. I have to create a diversion, and I have to find you more food. You're leaving us, Flicker said, his voice accusing. I am saving you, Noah snapped. I can't run that heater while they're scanning. You'll have to huddle for warmth. I'll be back. But I can't stay here. If they find me here, they find you. He needed to get back to his galley. He needed to make it look like he was just a simple cook, terrified by the consortium lockdown, hiding in his kitchen. And he had to call a favor. A very old, very complicated favor. Before he left, he looked back at the 4 children. They were a miserable, shivering pile of blankets in the dark. If he left, how would he know if it was safe to return? How could he warn them? His eyes fell on his bioforge station, back in the galley. The answer was obvious. It was the only language he had left, flavor. He slipped out of the cold storage, sealing the door behind him, and made his way back through the tunnels. The galley was just as he had left it, the spilled batter a golden smear on the floor. He cleaned it, his hands shaking slightly. He activated his console, making it look like he was just catching up on shipping manifests. Then, he got to work. He was a culinary biologist. He had access to the restricted flavor bank from his old diplomatic corps days. The license was still valid, buried deep in his credentials. He had not just been a chef, he had been a negotiator, using scent and taste as language. He synthesized 2 new batches of the rice honey cakes. The first, he infused with a complex, toasted sesame protein. It was warm, nutty, and savory. It felt like safety. The second, he laced with a microdose of synthesized cinnamaldehyde prime. It was sharp, biting, and electric on the tongue. It was a jolt of pure warning. He ran a quick, silent test. The Kitsari olfactory sense, he calculated, was over 800 times more powerful than his. He did not need to be in the same room. He just needed to be in the same ventilation sector. He slipped back to the cold storage unit. He did not go in. He cracked the door seal just a fraction of an inch and placed a small, activated carbon filter, loaded with the sesame compound, near the opening. The station's air recyclers would do the rest. He heard a faint sniff from inside, then a quiet, "It smells good." He resealed the door and leaned against the cold metal, his heart aching. He had just turned comfort food into a coded message. Sesame means I am here. It is safe. Cinnamon, which he kept in a pressurized vial on his belt, would mean they are coming. Do not open the door for anything. Danger. It was a crude, desperate system, but it was all he had. He made his way to his private quarters, a small, sterile room adjoining the galley. He locked the door and pulled a privacy shield over the viewport. He sat at his personal terminal, a non-consortium black market model he had rebuilt himself. He powered it up, bypassing the station's compromised network and bouncing his signal through 3 separate defunct satellites in the debris field. It was slow. It was barely traceable. He pulled up a single contact. The name was just Aria. The line connected after 5 agonizingly long rings. Her face appeared on his screen, sharp and clear. Aria Solis. Her black hair was cut in a severe, stylish bob. Her eyes were the color of new credits, and just as sharp. She was wearing the deep blue jacket of an independent merchant captain. She was beautiful, and she looked annoyed. "Noah Hart," she said, her voice a smooth, sarcastic drawl. "To what do I owe the pleasure finally decide to crawl out of your grease pit and rejoin the living?" "Aria," he said. His voice was rough. It had been 3 years. Their parting had not been clean. A brief, intense affair when he was still reeling from Alara's death. And she was a young traitor trying to make a name. He had pushed her away. "It's been a while," he managed. 3 years, 4 months, and 11 days. "Not that I'm counting," she said, tapping a stylus against her console. "You look terrible. What is it, need a loan? A new scrubber module, I'm not running a charity, Hart?" "I need a favor," he said, cutting to the chase. "A medical resupply. No questions asked." "Medical you?" she scoffed. "You're the healthiest recluse I know. What is it? Nutrient paste finally rotting your insides?" "I need lumen salt," he said. "High grade. As much as you can find." Aria's sarcastic smile vanished. Her face went blank. All business. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "You have 10 seconds to tell me why you're asking for a component that's currently on every restricted trade list in the Eastern Contact," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Because that's not medical. Noah. That's political. What have you gotten yourself into?" "I can't tell you," he said. "But I'm helping someone. Some refugees. Their children, Aria. They're sick. Without it. They'll die." She studied his face, her gaze intense, searching. He saw a flicker of the woman he used to know, The one who would risk her cargo manifest to smuggle medical supplies to a plague-ridden colony. "Children," she repeated. She sat back, running a hand through her hair. "Damn you, Noah. Damn you for still being a decent man. Do you have any idea what's happening out here?" "I know the consortium is here," he said. "A special acquisitions team. Archon Morrow." Arya's sharp intake of breath was audible, even over the comm. "Morrow, you're kidding me. He's on your station, Noah. You need to get out of there. Right now." "Why? What's going on?" "The consortium has the entire sector locked down. They're stopping every independent trader, impounding ships on any pretext. They're looking for something. Something big. The bounty they're offering, it's astronomical. Enough to buy a small moon." A bounty. For what? Arya hesitated. "For escaped fox cubs. That's what the bulletin calls them. 4 of them. From the Mother Star Dominion." Noah's blood ran cold. "They know. They know what they are." "Noah," she said, her voice grim. "And the chatter on the encrypted networks is insane. The Dominion is furious. The Mother Star is mobilizing. There are rumors. Old, crazy rumors. They're saying a Starweaver has awakened." The word meant nothing to him. "Arya, I don't care about Starweavers. I care about these children. Can you get me the salt or not?" "It's not that simple," she hissed. "Morrow has logistics control. Even if I had any. Which I'm not admitting. How would I get it to you? He's got Saffron buttoned up tight." "Docking Bay 9, Noah said immediately. "The old emergency evac port. It's behind the recycling core. The seals are shot, but the external door is still functional. It's not on his schematic. It's not on any modern schematic." "I can cycle it manually from here." Arya stared at him. "You've been busy." "I'm a mechanic, remember," he said. "Can you do it?" She chewed on her lower lip. A high-risk, no-profit run to a lockdown station, bypassing a consortium Archon, to deliver a politically volatile substance. All for a man who dumped me via text message. Let me think about it. Yes. Relief hit Noah so hard, his knees almost buckled. "Arya, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "I'm 200.5 light hours out. At best. I can get a fast supply drone to you in 18 hours. And it will cost you everything you have." "Done," he said without hesitation. 18 hours. "One more thing." "Noah," she said, her face serious. "Morrow. He's not just acquisitions. He's consortium internal review. He's the one cleaning up corporate messes. If he's there, it's not just about recovery. It's about containment. Be careful. Don't be the mess he needs to clean up." The call cut. "Internal review. Cleans up corporate messes." The phrase echoed in Noah's mind. A cold, dreadful suspicion began to form. He turned back to his terminal. He was not looking at shipping manifests anymore. He was digging, pulling up his own encrypted private files. He opened the file labeled Cora Prime. It was his own obsessive investigation into the bridge collapse. Years of data, witness reports, and alloy composition analyses. And then he found it. A small, buried addendum to the final consortium report. The incident had been officially closed. The final review, which cleared the consortium of all wrongdoing and blamed the collapse on a freak resonance wave, was signed by the lead investigator. Noah stared at the name, his vision blurring. He felt the air leave his lungs, as if he had been punched. A then-junior logistics officer signed the report, commended for his thoroughness and efficiency in closing the case. Archon Morrow. Morrow had not just started chasing kids. He had been hunting Noah for years without knowing it. He had signed the paper that had officially murdered Alara. Noah looked at his hands. They were shaking. But it was not from fear. It was from a rage so cold and so deep, it felt like it could freeze the stars. He stood up. He was a cook. He was a mechanic. He was a man in hiding. But not anymore. He was going to protect those children. He was going to get them the salt they needed to live. And then, he was going to take Archon Morrow's carefully constructed world and burn it to the ground. He had the recipe, and he was finally ready to cook. The cold storage unit was no longer a refuge. It was a trap. The air was stale, thick with the smell of 4 frightened children and the faint, metallic tang of their fear. Noah had managed 2 trips, bringing back water packs and more of the nutrient-dense, enzyme-laced snacks. Each trip was a gamble, a tense stalk through service tunnels, his ears straining for the sound of consortium boots. He was in the main galley, his safe zone, when the intercom on his wall chimed. Not the station-wide broadcast, but a direct, internal hail. "Galley, acknowledge," a synthesized voice snapped. It was not Doc Matron. It was one of Morrow's patrol leaders. Noah's heart leaped into his throat. He smoothed the front of his stained cook's tunic and pressed the comm. "Galley here. What do you need?" "Archon Morrow requires a full-service briefing from all department heads. As you are the ranking and only member of Culinary Services, you will report to the concourse in 5 minutes. Bring a sample of your work." The voice dripped with disdain. It was a test, a summons, a way to get his face on their internal scanners, to match his biosigns against a file. But it was also an opportunity. "Of course," Noah said, forcing a subservient, slightly terrified tremor into his voice. "Right away. Just finishing a batch of protein broth for the patrol. As a courtesy. For keeping us safe." There was a pause. "The Archon is not interested in broth. Bring sustenance." "Yes, sir. 5 minutes." Noah cut the connection and worked with demonic speed. He did not make broth. He went to his private reserve, the one he had used for the Kitsari. He pulled a vial labeled Enzyme C40, Smoky Mesquite Complex. It was a powerful, layered flavoring agent. On its own, it was harmless, delicious even. But when aerosolized by the heat of a nutrient synthesizer and inhaled, its complex phenol chains were a magnificent, short-term irritant to non-adapted human bronchial tubes. It was, in essence, a 5-star coughing fit in a bottle. He mixed a triple dose into a batch of high-energy paste, molded it into crisp, appealing-looking ration bars, and sealed them in a sterile container. He found the patrol in the main concourse, clustered around Doc Matron's terminal, where Morrow's logic worm was still visibly corrupting the AI's interface. Morrow himself was not there. A broad-shouldered sergeant with a face like a slapped-together droid looked up as Noah approached. "You're the cook," the sergeant grunted. "Yes, sir." Noah Hart. "I just wanted to offer these to the team. As thanks." He offered the container, bowing his head, playing the role of the terrified civilian. The sergeant sneered, but he took the box. "We don't need—" "Sir, a gift is a gift," Noah said, his voice trembling. "Just a gesture of intercorporate cooperation." The sergeant's eyes narrowed, but he was hungry. The station's air was thin, and a lockdown was boring work. He cracked the seal. The moment the pressurized air inside the container hissed, the aerosolized enzyme hit the patrol. It started with the sergeant. His eyes widened. His hand flew to his throat, and he let out a sharp, barking hack. Then the guard next to him turned, inhaling to ask a question, and he too was seized. A deeper, wheezing cough. Within 10 seconds, the entire 6-man patrol was doubled over, consumed by a noisy, wheezing, luxurious coughing fit that sounded like a flock of seals being strangled. It was not painful, not damaging, but it was completely, hilariously incapacitating. "Oh my," Noah said, his eyes wide with fake panic. "Is it the air? It's so dry here?" The sergeant, his face bright red, glared at Noah, unable to speak, and waved a dismissive, angry hand. "Go get out," Noah practically ran back to the galley, the sound of hacking fading behind him. He had his diversion. He had bought himself time. And more importantly, he had confirmed they were arrogant, predictable, and susceptible to a well-placed menu. He secured the galley and made his way back to the service tunnels. But not to the cold storage. He went deeper, down to the recycling core, a place that smelled of hot metal and industrial solvents. He found the man he was looking for in a small, cluttered workshop, huddled over a sputtering plasma torch. Jax Calder was the station's real mechanic. He was a slab of a man, with one biological arm and one gleaming, oversized prosthetic that was more crane arm than hand. His left eye was a dull red, multi-lensed optic. He was, technically, half human, half machine, and all bad attitude. "What do you want, Hart?" Jax grunted, not looking up. His voice was a low rumble, filtered through a permanent scowl voice box. "Consortium lockdown. Afraid of the dark. I need your help," Noah said. "I need to get into Doc Matron's core. The physical core." Jax finally powered down the torch and turned. His red optic whirred as it focused on Noah. "You're insane. That's a restricted zone. And that Consortium Archon has his digital tentacles wrapped all around it. You'll be fried by a logic worm before you can even touch the access panel." "He's the one who poisoned her," Noah said. "And he's not just running a search. He's digging for something. I need to know what. And I need to get in behind his worm, to see what he's accessing." "Why?" Jax asked, crossing his massive, mismatched arms. "He's Consortium Internal Review," Noah said. "And he's the man who signed off on the Cora Prime incident." Jax's biological eye widened. His wife's cousin had been a welder on that bridge. "You're Noah Hart, the chef Alara's." "Yes," Noah said, his voice flat. "He's here, Jax, and he's hunting assets. I need to stop him, which means I need to know what he's really after." Jax was silent for a long moment. He looked at his own mechanical hand, then back at Noah. "This ain't a good deed, Hart. This is a suicide mission." "I know," Jax sighed, a sound like a leaking hydraulic press. "Then we're gonna need a translator." He tapped a small, floating sphere that had been hovering over his shoulder, charting his torchwork. The sphere zipped over to Noah and spun. A holographic, animated face, a simple circle with two large, inquisitive eyes, popped into existence above it. "Greetings, organic," the sphere chirped, its voice a pleasant, synthesized tenor. "I am Scribe 9. I specialize in the analysis and translation of electrochemical data, thermal decay patterns, atmospheric anomalies, and, for my primary function, the linguistic interpretation of complex scent and flavor profiles. A pleasure to make your acquaintance." "Scribe, shut up," Jax grunted. "Hart, this is Scribe 9. He's a custom-built analysis AI. He can read data streams the way you read a recipe. If there's a file buried in Matron's core, he can sniff it out." "He translates flavor?" Noah asked, stunned. "Ahem," Scribe 9 zipped up to Noah's face. "To be precise, I interpret the molecular gastronomic linguistic interface. The history of a species is in its food. Master Hart, its wars, its loves, its fears, all are encoded in the proteins of its diet. You, a culinary biologist, should know this." Noah stared at the AI. "A partner." "Scribe 9, he said. "Can you interface with a compromised AI core without being detected by a consortium logic worm?" "Pa," the AI chirped. "A consortium worm is a blunt instrument. It is how you say an overspiced, undercooked stew. I, Scribe, am a 9-course tasting menu. I will slip past his palate like a subtle, peppery afternote. It will be trivial. Good, Noah said. Jax, I need you to cut the physical access plate, quietly. Scribe, I need you to ride the data stream. And I need one more thing. He looked at Jax. I need you to get a message to Arya Solis, Bay 9, 18 hours. She'll know what it means. Jax nodded, a grim smile touching his lips. Cutting metal and running contraband. Now that sounds like a job. The AI core was a cold, dark room, filled with the hum of 1,000 servers. Jax used a high-frequency thermal lance to peel open the access plate with barely a sound, while Scribe 9 disabled the local alarms. Arya is on the line, Jax whispered, tapping his own custom comlink. She's patching in remotely. She's going to hit his worm from the outside, creating a pressure spike to distract him. You and Scribe get one shot. You'll have maybe 3 minutes. Understood, Noah said. Scribe, get in there. The small AI zipped into the glowing, data-filled port. On Noah's wrist monitor, Scribe's simple, circular face appeared, its eyes now narrowed in concentration. I am in, Scribe chirped, his voice now a strained whisper in Noah's ear. Oh, my, this is not a stew. This is a dumpster. The filth, the sloppy code. Here we go. He has quarantined the original star logs. He is searching for Cora Prime. Get it, Noah urged. Get it all. Copying, he is thorough. He is looking for that is interesting. He is searching for a Star Weaver, a very old, very obscure file. Ignore it, Noah said. Get the Cora Prime logs. Get the memos. Memos. Yes, I see them. Aha, Project Corridor. Oh, this is deliciously evil. 1 minute, Jax warned, his red optic scanning the corridor. Patrol, 2 levels down, but moving up. I have it, Scribe announced. I have the memos, the original structural analyses, the projected profit margins. Master Hart, this is not just a signature. This is a recipe for mass murder. Get out, now. On my way, Scribe zipped out of the port, just as Jax slapped the panel back into place. Move, Jax growled, shoving Noah toward a maintenance duct. Go. They made it back to Jax's workshop, just as the station-wide lockdown alarms blared. They huddled in the dark, Scribe 9 projecting the stolen files onto the grimy wall. It was worse than Noah had ever imagined. It was not mere negligence. It was a plan. Memos from Archon Morrow, then a junior officer, to his superiors. A proposal. Project Exclusive Corridor. The Cora Prime Bridge was the only non-consortium route into the rich, undeveloped Velis sector. Morrow's plan was simple use substandard. Untraceable alloys in the primary support struts. Alloys known to fail under specific resonance frequencies. Then, wait for a large enough freighter to hit that exact frequency. The incident would be tragic, but unavoidable. The bridge would be gone, and the consortium, which had the only other, longer route, would have a total monopoly on the Veil's run for the next 50 years. Projected profits were quadrillion. The projected acceptable losses from the collapse were listed as up to 5,000 biologicals. Alara had been one of up to 5,000 biologicals. Noah sank to the floor, the data light washing over his pale, unmoving face. He felt hollowed out, scoured clean by a grief so cold it burned. It was not a tragedy. It was an invoice. Noah, Jax said, his voice quiet. Hart, I'm sorry. Scribe 9 hovered near Noah's shoulder. Master Hart, the flavor of this is rusty, and old blood. Noah looked up, his eyes empty. He's not just a man, he whispered. He's a system that eats people. A new sound cut through his grief, a high-pitched, frantic beeping. It was not from the workshop. It was coming from his personal comlink. A priority alert, from the cold storage unit. He sprinted through the tunnels, his heart hammering with a new, different dread. He arrived at the sealed door to cold storage 3. He did not use the cinnamon warning. There was no time. He slammed his hand on the panel and yanked the door open. The scene inside was chaotic. The induction heater he had jury-rigged was spitting sparks, its casing glowing a dangerous, white-hot. Pebble was standing over it, his small hands moving with impossible speed, twisting wires and rerouting a smoking power conduit. "Pebble, get away from it!" Noah yelled, lunging for him. "No!" Pebble shouted, not looking up. The valve, it was sticking. The pressure was wrong. He gave a final, sharp twist to a salvaged fitting, and the sparking stopped. The heater settled back into its dull, cherry-red glow. Pebble sat back on his heels, panting, and wiped a smear of grease from his nose. "It's stable now, but the core coil is failing." Noah stared at the boy. "You fixed it." "He is a maker," Flicker said, stepping forward. He looked terrible. His face was pale and slick with sweat, his hands pressed to his temples. "And I am a seer. And the big fire is coming, Noah, the real one." "What big fire?" Noah said, kneeling, his biologist brain taking over. He ran a scanner over Flicker. The boy's brainwave patterns were off the charts. "The wind," Flicker gasped. "It's screaming. It's coming soon. A storm. Not like the others. Worse." "A major plasma efflux," Noah breathed. Flicker had just predicted a coronal mass ejection, something even Doc Matron's long-range sensors would have missed. "He's not the only one," Cinder said, her voice small. She was huddled in the corner. Then, her voice changed. It became a perfect, nasal timbered replica of the consortium sergeant. "Patrol 7, report in. We have an anomalous heat signature in Sector 4 Alpha. Move to intercept." Noah whirled, his thermal pipe in his hand. "Who's there?" Cinder looked up, her own voice returning. "That's what they said. In the tunnel. Before." She could mimic voices. Perfectly. And then there was Dawn, the smallest one. She was sitting in the corner, her eyes closed, sniffing the air. "Sesame," she whispered. "Safe, before cinnamon, danger." She looked at Noah. "But under that, I can smell Earth, the proteins, the sweet honey, from your first kitchen. You miss Alara." Noah stumbled back as if struck. She had a perfect, eidetic scent. She was not just smelling the air. She was reading his past, his emotions, encoded in the trace molecules he had brought in on his clothes. They were not just children. They were a seer, a mechanic, a mimic, and a living archive. And he was just a cook. He had to get them out. He went back to the galley, his mind a whirlwind. He had a seer, a hacker, a mechanic, and a smuggler on his side. He had a recipe for murder, and he had 4 impossible children who were counting on him. He began to train them. He brought them spoons and bowls. "This isn't a game," he said, his voice low and serious. He tapped a metal spoon against a metal bowl, a single, sharp clang. One tap, scatter, hide, be invisible. He tapped twice. A quick clang-clang. 2 taps. Silence. Not a breath. Freeze. He set the spoon down and touched his hand to the lip of the bowl. "Hand on the bowl. Group up. Come to me. No matter what. We move as one." He drilled them for an hour, his coded snacks as rewards. Sesame for a correct response. They learned fast. The kitchen, his old comfort place, had become his new command center. His comlink chimed. It was Arya. Her face was grim. "I'm at the rendezvous, Noah, Bay 9. But I'm not alone. Morrow's ship, the Argent, just launched 3 heavy drones. They're scanning the debris field. They're looking for me." "Can you get the drone in?" Noah asked, his stomach tight. "I can try, But Noah, the rumors are getting worse. It's not just chatter. The Mother Star. She is moving. The entire Dominion fleet is on high alert. They're saying the Empress herself has left the Star Throne, looking for her lost children. Noah, what did you get yourself into? Arya, they are the children. They're here. With me. She was silent. Her sharp eyes scanned his face. His exhaustion. The manic, protective fire in his eyes. You're hiding something else, she said, her voice suddenly soft. It's not just the kids, it's not just Alara. There's something else about you. You're not just a cook. Are you? He looked down at his hands, stained with grease and synthetic honey. I'm just a man who is very good with a recipe. Arya's small, sad smile was the last thing he saw before she cut the feed. He was about to contact Jax when the whole station groaned. A deep, shuddering vibration that threw him against the wall. The lights flickered, died, and came back on, bathing the galley in dim, red emergency lighting. Alarms blared. Doc Matron's voice, now almost unrecognizable. A garbled, terrified digital scream. Warning, warning. Catastrophic plasma efflux detected. All shields at maximum. Impact in 9 minutes. Flicker's storm. It was here. And at the same moment, Archon Maro's voice cut through the alarms, cold and clear. All internal bulkheads sealed. All station personnel. Present yourselves for immediate bioscan. Anyone not at a registered post will be contained. The heavy thud of bulkhead sealing echoed through the station. He was trapped. Jax was trapped. And the children were trapped in a cold storage unit with a failing heater. But Noah just smiled. A grim, terrible smile. He ran to the galley's main console, the ventilation system. When a plasma storm hit, the station's core recyclers went into overdrive, flushing the air to prevent ozone buildup. The ducts would be active, noisy, and hot. He pulled up the schematic. The galley's main exhaust vent. It was huge, designed to clear flash fires and smoke. It led directly to a technical shaft which ran right past Cold Storage 3. Morrow had just sealed the doors. He had not sealed the vents. Noah began to type, overriding safety protocols. He was not a cook. He was not a mechanic. He was a culinary biologist. He was an engineer of atmospheres. He reversed the flow of the galley's primary heating core, forcing thousands of cubic feet of hot, breathable air away from the kitchen and into the exhaust ducts. He created, in essence, a high-speed, pressurized tunnel of warm air. He grabbed his comlink. Jax, get to the shaft on level 3. Bring the kids now. He grabbed his thermal pipe and a bag of sesame-safe snacks. He raced to the cold storage unit, the station, screaming around him. He threw the door open. Get up, he yelled at the 4 terrified children. We're leaving. We're taking the chimney. He led them, not to the hall, but to a small, grated panel in the wall. He tore it open, and a blast of warm, sweet-smelling air from his own kitchen hit them in the face. It was their escape. A tunnel made of warm air and the smell of home. The ventilation shaft was a narrow, metal throat, and it was choking them. Noah's engineered blast of hot, sweet-smelling air made the crawl bearable, but the noise was deafening. Outside the station's hull, mere feet away, the plasma storm was reaching its zenith. It was not a sound, but a physical vibration, a deep, resonating growl that shook the very atoms of the depot. Noah was last in line, pushing the children forward. The metal was hot beneath his palms. The air, thick with the smell of his own kitchen sesame and honey and the sharp, electric blue tang of ozone. Keep moving, he urged, his voice a low grunt. It's loud, Pebble shouted back, his voice small and thin against the roar. It's so loud. It's the song, Flicker gasped, his hands pressed to the sides of the duct, his eyes wide in the dark. He was not just hearing it. He was feeling it, It's beautiful and so angry. Focus on me, Noah commanded. Focus on the smell. The smell means home. It means safe. Just follow the smell. Safe, Dawn whispered from the front of the line. And metal. Old. Rusted. And someone is afraid. No. Not afraid. Waiting. Before Noah could process that, the tunnel ended. A heavy, grated panel, bolted to the wall. He saw Jax Calder's single, glowing red optic through the slats. Took you long enough, Hart, Jax's mechanical voice rumbled. His massive prosthetic arm wrenched the grate from its housing as if it were paper. Get out, all of you, now. They tumbled out one by one into the vast, freezing darkness of Bay 9. This was one of the original cargo holds, a cavernous space that had not seen a registered ship in 30 years. The only light came from Jax's optic and the terrifying, flickering green and violet light of the plasma storm, visible through the bay's massive, unshielded viewport. The entire far wall was a window into the screaming heart of the storm. "Where's Arya?" Noah panted, helping Dawn to her feet. "Running interference," Jax grunted, welding the vent panel shut behind them. "She's got Morrow's drones tied in knots." As if on cue, Jax's personal comm, a battered unit wired directly into his cybernetics, crackled. Arya's voice, strained, but trying for sarcasm, filled the air. "Gentlemen, and small, vulpine assets, you'll be pleased to know that Consortium Tactical Drone Alpha is currently scanning my cargo of 2250 vintage Chateau Prime. Apparently, their tactical officer is a secret wine enthusiast. It's bought us maybe 10 minutes. The supply drone is docked and waiting on my mark." 10 minutes isn't enough, Jax said. He held up a gray, putty-like brick, a standard-issue demolition charge. "I'm going to make a little noise. The patrol that was coughing its lungs out in the concourse just got a system reboot. They're sweeping this way. I'm going to blow a secondary power conduit on the deck below. Should give them a new, more exciting hobby." "Go," Noah said. "We'll wait for your signal." Jax nodded once. "Don't get dead, Hart. It's a lot of paperwork." He disappeared into a maintenance shaft, moving with a speed that belied his bulk. Noah was alone with the children, in a vast, dark room, with nothing but a sheet of reinforced transparasteel separating them from a cosmic inferno. The Kitsari were drawn to the viewport, their faces pressed against the cold surface, their tails twitching. "It's pulling," Cinder whispered, her hand on the glass. The faint, dead filaments of her tail began to glow, a weak, hesitant blue, feeding on the stray radiation. "Don't get too close," Noah warned, his voice tight. He reached into his pack. He had 4 small, dense, vacuum-sealed cakes. They were the last of his lumen salt, compressed with the last of his protein isolates. It was not just food, it was a lifeline. "Listen to me," he said, handing one to each. "This is important. This is not just a snack. That storm flicker is right. It's angry. It's raw. Our shields are the only thing filtering it. When Arya's drone opens that door, the raw energy is going to hit this room. It will overwhelm you. This is the key." He held the small, dense cake. "It will let your bodies tune the storm, not just be hit by it. It will let you process the song. Do not eat it. Not until I tell you." "Understood." 4 small, serious faces nodded. A distant, muffled whump vibrated through the deck. A new, more urgent alarm began to blare from the station's internal speakers. Jax's voice came over the comm. Just a single, triumphant word: showtime. "Arya, he's done," Noah said into his own comm. "Get the drone in here, now." "On it," she replied. "External door override now. Get ready. Noah. This is going to be rough." The massive, space-facing port of Bay 9, A circle of metal, 100 meters wide, began to groan. A sliver of pure, white-hot plasma light cut the darkness. And then, every light in the bay snapped on. Not the dim emergency lights, not the flickering stormlight, but brilliant, harsh, sterile spotlights, pinning them in place. How utterly predictable. The voice was not Arya's. It was not Jax's. It was the silken, cold, cultured voice of Archon Morrow. He was standing on a high gantry, not 20 meters away. He was not alone. He was flanked by two guards in sleek, gray armor that Noah did not recognize. Armor that seemed to drink the light. They were not the standard, thuggish consortium patrol. This was his personal, elite team. "Really, Mr. Hart," Morrow said, descending a short flight of stairs, his boots clicking with sharp, metallic precision on the gantry. "A defunct, unregistered emergency port. You are, at your core, a man of logistics. It was the only logical variable, and I always account for the variables." "The patrol," Noah whispered, pushing the children behind him. "Was a diversion," Morrow said with a cold smile. "To pull your oversized mechanical friend. To leave you exposed. I hate messy confrontations." He raised a hand. He was holding a small, black projector. "But, given the volatile nature of the assets, I came prepared." He clicked a switch. From pylons hidden in the ceiling, a shimmering, dark energy field projected downwards, forming a perfect, circular cage around Noah and the children. It was not a physical net. It was a field of black, oily, hungry light. The children screamed. It was not a sound of fear. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated agony. Noah clapped his hands over his ears, but it did not help. The sound was inside his head. He watched in horror as the children collapsed. The faint, newfound blue light in their tails was extinguished. But it was worse than that. The light was being pulled from them, siphoned invisible, shimmering strands of energy, drawn into the dark, humming projectors above. "It hurts," Flicker gasped from the floor, his body convulsing. He's drinking the song." "A star-draining field," Morrow said, his voice filled with academic, cruel curiosity. "A prototype, designed to pacify high-energy-based life forms. It seems to be working perfectly. It attunes to their unique biofrequency and reverses the flow. It drains them of their stellar symbiosis. Quite fascinating, is it not?" Pebble was writhing, his small hands clawing at his own chest. Dawn was unconscious, a tiny, still heap on the floor. "Noah," Cinder whispered, her hand outstretched. "Hurts." "The cakes," Noah roared, his mind snapping into focus. "Eat the cakes now." He fell to his knees, grabbing the still unconscious Dawn, and forced the dense, lumen-laced cake into her mouth. He saw Flicker, Cinder, and Pebble, their movements sluggish, agonized, biting down. The effect was not subtle. It was an explosion. The lumen salt, the key, hit their systems. Their bodies, primed and starving, were suddenly given a conduit, a path. The star-draining net was pulling energy out, but the plasma storm outside was an ocean of raw, unbridled power pressing in. The cake, the lumen salt, had just opened the floodgates. Womb. A wave of pure, blue-white energy erupted from the four children. Their tails did not just glow. They ignited, blazing with the light of a small star. The energy from the storm, no longer filtered, no longer gentle, poured into them. The star-draining net was suddenly trying to drink from a tidal wave. The projectors screamed, a high-pitched metallic shriek as they were overloaded. The black field flickered, turning a sickly, stressed-out purple. Morrow stared, his calm shattering, his face a mask of disbelief. "What did you do?" "He's a cook," Morrow snarled, recovering, his hand moving to a weapon on his hip. He just seasoned the assets, but that won't be enough. He stepped forward, into the blinding, strobing light of the overloaded net and the blazing children. He activated his personal data pad, and a holographic image flared to life between them. It was a mugshot of Noah. "You are so much more than a cook. Are you not, Noah Hart?" Morrow sneered. The file appeared in the air. Consortium Internal Review. Case File Cora Prime. Subject Noah Hart. Motive Greed. Action Premeditated Sabotage. "What?" Noah whispered, his blood turning to ice. "The lie," Morrow said, his voice triumphant. "The truth. The one I was prepared to file with the Interstellar Tribunal." The data scrolled. Falsified bank transfers. A forged, high-yield life insurance policy, taken out on Alara. A faked, anonymous tip-off. "You knew the alloys were substandard, because you were the one who sourced them, through a black market contact. You planned to sabotage the bridge, kill your fiancé along with 5,000 other insignificant souls, collect the insurance, and disappear. But you are a coward. You lost your nerve. You ran. You hid. A guilty, pathetic little man, hiding in a grease pit, pretending to mourn." Noah stared at the file. It was a perfect, intricate, and utterly diabolical lie. It was airtight. It was the truth Morrow had created, the leverage he had held over the entire incident. "It's a lie," Noah said, his voice shaking, not with fear, but with a rage so profound it was suffocating him. "It is the truth that is on file," Morrow said, his eyes glittering. "It is the truth that will be released to every newsfeed in the galaxy. The truth that will make you the most hated man in history, unless you hand over the biologicals. Right now, you are a loose end, Mr. Hart, and I despise loose ends." He nodded to his guards. "Intensify the field. Section focus. Start with a small one." One of the guards, his movements jerky as he fought the energy backlash, manipulated a console on his arm. The overloaded field, which had been general, suddenly constricted, its full, agonizing power focusing into a single, dark beam aimed at Dawn. Dawn, who had been glowing, cried out. Her light, her brilliant, blazing blue light, flickered. It dimmed. It began to sputter. Noah saw it. He saw the tiny, perfect, innocent child. He saw her light going out. He saw Alara, smiling at him from the bridge console. He saw the fire. He saw the file. The lie. No. The word was not a shout. It was a tear in the fabric of the universe. It was a sound from the center of his soul, a place of grief and fire he had kept locked away for 3 years. He did not run. He did not think. He reacted. His right hand, a cook's hand, a mechanic's hand, a hand stained with grease and synthetic honey, snapped up. He was not reaching for Morrow. He was not reaching for Dawn. He was reaching for the energy itself, and for the first time in his life, he felt it. The air, which had been empty, was suddenly thick. It was full of lines, strands of power, magnetic, electric, raw. The blue, chaotic energy of the Kitsari. The dark, draining energy of the net. The white-hot, angry energy of the storm. His hand, his palm, began to glow. It was not Kitsari blue. It was not black from the net. It was a deep, molten, kitchen fire gold. He felt his fingers make contact, not with a solid object, but with the texture of the draining field. It was oily, cold, and wrong. He clenched his glowing fist, and he pulled. The laws of physics screamed and looked the other way. The energy field, the star-draining net, did not break. It did not shatter. It bent. It stretched. The focused, dark beam that had been killing Dawn was torn from its target, warped against its own nature, and pulled into a single, condensing line that shot directly to Noah's hand. The guard's console exploded in a shower of sparks. The projector pylon above them shrieked as it was force-fed its own energy, amplified by Noah's pull. It glowed white-hot. The energy, now raw and uncontained, did not just dissipate. It melted. The shimmering field turned from black to a cherry red. It warped, thickened, and like superheated sugar, like spun caramel, it dripped to the floor in glowing, harmless spatters of light. Silence. The only sounds were the whoomp, whoomp, whoomp of the dying projectors, the roar of the storm, and Noah's own ragged, panting breath. Morrow and his guards were staring, their mouths open, their faces pale with a new, more profound terror. Noah looked at his right hand. It was still glowing a dull, pulsing gold. It was smoking. And it was hot, radiating a heat that made the air shimmer. "My God," he panted, the adrenaline washing out, leaving him weak. "What kitchen can possibly handle this kind of heat?" Arya's voice, shaking, crackled over the station's all-call comm, which she had clearly hijacked. "Yours. Apparently now move, you magnificent, terrifying idiot." The blast door. "To your left, orbital B access." Morrow snapped out of his shock. "It's a Star Weaver," he whispered, "a name from an ancient, hated legend. It's real. Seize him. Seize them all." The two gray-armored guards raised their pulse rifles, but the net was down. The kids, blazing with blue light, were on their feet, and from a heating duct above, Jax dropped to the floor, his rivet gun firing a stream of white-hot metal projectiles. "Cover! Go! Heart go!" Jax roared, providing a deafening metallic distraction. Noah scooped up Dawn, who was dazed but glowing. "Flicker, Cinder Pebble. To the door. That one." He pointed to a massive, circular bulkhead, rusted and scarred, marked Orbital B access. A heavy, red light above it flashed. Access denied. "It's sealed!" Pebble yelled, pounding a small, futile fist against the metal. Morrow's guards were advancing. Jax's rivets were bouncing harmlessly off their advanced armor. "Cinder," Noah yelled, a desperate gamble. His voice. "You can do it." Use his voice now. Cinder, her eyes blazing, her tail a whip of blue fire, understood. She planted her feet, took a deep, shuddering breath, and shouted. The voice that came out was not her own. It was a perfect, cold, imperious replica of Archon Morrow. "Override command. Archon Alpha Niner disengage. All internal locks. Authorization Omega Black. Now." The red light on the panel flickered. A processor, deep in the station's compromised core, recognized the voice, the command, the authority. There was a clunk of grinding, ancient gears, a shriek of metal on metal. The access denied light turned a sudden, brilliant green. Access granted. "The wheel," Jax yelled, shoving a guard back with his prosthetic arm. "Pull it." Noah and Jax threw their combined weight onto the massive, manual override wheel. It groaned, resisted, and then, with a shriek of tortured, ancient metal, it began to turn. The door, a meter-thick slab of steel, cracked open, revealing a dark, cold, empty workshop beyond. Get in," Jax yelled, pushing the children through. Cinder, Pebble, and Flicker scrambled into the darkness. Jax went next. Noah, still carrying Dawn, turned for one last look. Morrow was standing 20 feet away, his immaculate uniform covered in dust and grease, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. He was not looking at the kids. He was not looking at Jax. He was looking at Noah, at his still faintly glowing hand. "You!" Morrow snarled, raising his own sidearm. "You will not leave this station alive." "My kitchen," Noah panted, his body screaming with exhaustion. "My rules." He gave Morrow a short, universally understood, two-fingered gesture of defiance, and tumbled back through the bulkhead. Jax slammed the door behind him. The heavy wheel spun, the locks engaging with a final, echoing thud of sanctuary. They heard a muffled thwack as a plasma bolt hit the other side of the door, followed by a scream of pure, impotent rage. On the other side of that door, Archon Morrow stood, trembling. It was not fear. It was not even just rage. It was awesome. A terrible, hateful, ancestral awe. "Did you see it?" he whispered to his remaining, dazed guard. "Sir, his hand it." "A Star Weaver," Morrow said, the word tasting like poison. The old, hated bloodline. The feud his family had whispered about for centuries. It was not a myth. It was real. The Cora Prime incident was not a random assignment. He was there. He was always the target. He activated his private, long-range comm, connecting to the Argent, his flagship, which was waiting just beyond the storm. "This is Archon Morrow. Scramble Priority 1. Send the Argent. Send the entire 7th Fleet Detachment. The assets are located—" He paused, his eyes fixed on the sealed bulkhead, a strange, terrible smile on his lips. "And we have found something else. A confirmed, active and human Star Weaver." He looked at the scorched, sealed door to Orbital B. "I am marking Depot Saffron as a primary capture nest. Authorization Omega. Burn the rest of the station to the ground if you have to. I want them. I want him." The heavy, 1-meter-thick bulkhead door of Orbital B slammed shut with the echoing finality of a tomb. The locks, ancient and starved of lubricant, shrieked as Jax spun the manual wheel. The sound, a metallic counterpoint to the muffled, plasma-fueled thud of Morrow's rage on the other side. For a breathless second, there was silence. The workshop was a derelict cathedral of metal, vast and cold. Dead machinery sat under dust shrouds like forgotten worshippers. The only light came from the faint, pulsing blue glow of the 4 Kitsari children, and the residual, fading gold in Noah's right hand. "Well," Arya Solis said, her voice sharp and brittle in the cold air. She was leaning against a pillar, a small, elegant pulse pistol, clutched in a white-knuckled grip. She had been waiting at the Bay 9 rendezvous as promised, only to be swept into the escape when Morrow's trap snapped shut. "This has escalated. Your definition of refugees needs some serious work. Hart." "Everyone just breathe," Noah panted, setting Dawn on her feet. His whole body thrummed, his nerves screaming from the impossible thing he had just done. He looked at his hand. Now just a hand, blistered and covered in grease. "What was that?" Jax rumbled, his single red optic whirring as it scanned Noah. "The caramel pull. That ain't in any mechanics manual I ever read." Before Noah could answer, the children moved. They did not run. They walked, a strange, solemn procession, past him, past Arya, past the hulking, dead machinery, to the very center of the workshop floor. "Flicker!" Noah shouted, taking a step. "It's a resonance," Flicker whispered, his eyes closed. Cinder, Pebble, and Dawn stood in a small, tight circle, their tails, now blazing with a soft, steady blue light, overlapping. "She's here. She found us." "Who's here?" Arya demanded, raising her pistol. "Morrow, did he get another way?" The air in the center of the room did not shimmer. It tore. It was a delicate, silent, and terrifying rip in the fabric of space. It did not explode. It unfolded, like a piece of divine origami. A circle of light, the color of a newborn star, pulsed, grew, and stabilized, forming a perfect, vertical disk of rippling, liquid energy. It was not a door. It was a window. A figure stepped through. She was tall, impossibly tall, and clad not in armor, but in robes that seemed woven from the dark, stellar nursery dust of a nebula, lit from within by the pinpricks of 1,000 distant suns. Her face was sharp, ageless, and possessed a beauty that was as terrifying as it was profound. Her ears were kitsari, pointed and elegant, and from her back, not 4, but 9 tails fanned out, each one a slow-flowing river of pure, white light. She was flanked by 2 guards, silent and unmoving as pillars of basalt, their armor a dark, mirror-like material that seemed to bend and swallow the light around them. The woman's eyes, the color of a violet supernova, swept the room. They passed over Jax, Arya, and the machinery. Then, they found Noah. Her gaze was not a look. It was a weight. It was the pressure of 1,000-year-old intellect, of a power that commanded suns. She looked at his blistered, greasy, right hand, and her expression, which had been impassive, softened with a flicker of recognition, of understanding. "The blood," she said. Her voice was not a sound. It was a chord, a harmony of gravity and wind chimes that resonated directly in his chest. So long we had thought it was lost, the imprint of the weaver in a human. The 4 children, who had been standing with a strange, new dignity, dropped to one knee. They bowed their heads, a gesture of absolute, loving reverence. "Mother," they said in unison. Noah's brain, which had been processing astrophysics, tactical kitchen warfare, and adrenaline, simply stopped. He stared at the 4 children. He stared at the 9-tailed goddess in the center of the room. Flicker, Cinder, Pebble, Dawn, the stolen assets, the escaped fox cubs. "Oh," he whispered, a sound of stupid, dawning horror. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me." He was not hiding refugees. He was hiding the crown prince and princesses of the entire Mother Star Dominion. He had been cooking black market, enzyme-laced snacks for royalty. "Empress Cylindris," Flicker said, his voice no longer that of a child, but of a prince. "We are unharmed. This human, Noah Hart, he gave us sanctuary. The Empress Cylindris, Empress of the Mother Star." Her violet eyes turned back to Noah, a new, unreadable emotion in them. And then the entire station shook, a deep, shuddering, violent vibration that was not the storm. It was the impact of 12 capital-class ships dropping out of warp, their engines rattling the depot's aging frame. Red emergency lights flashed. A terminal near Jax, one he had been coaxing back to life, flared. "Hart," Jax yelled, his voice tight. "He's here. The Argent, Morrow's flagship, and he brought friends, a full consortium battle group. They've formed a blockade. They have us. They have the whole station surrounded." As if summoned, Archon Morrow's voice boomed over the station's all-call, hijacked and amplified to a deafening roar. "Empress Cylindris, a magnificent entrance. As always, you value spectacle over subtlety. A mistake." On the monitor, Jax brought up the external feed. A massive, shark-like consortium cruiser, the Argent, dominated the view. But it was not the ship that was terrifying. It was the weapon it was deploying. A vast, skeletal array, a web of projectors and focusing lenses, was powering up, its target aimed directly at the station, directly at them. "This," Morrow's voice continued, "is a Mark IV radiance nullifier. A prototype, of course. My personal project. I had intended it for stellar nursery clearing, a way to tame unruly star systems. But it works just as well on rogue stargates." A sickly, black energy began to charge in the array's center. "Your Majesty," Morrow purred, the sound of a predator that knows it has won. "Your assets are, as you know, politically volatile. The consortium is prepared to overlook this little incident, in exchange for exclusive trade rights to the Velis sector. For, say, 1,000 years. The Vales sector, the Cora Prime Bridge, the motive for Ilara's death, it all came back to this. The Empress stood unmoved, a pillar of calm in the flashing red light. "The old oaths," she said, her voice easily cutting through Morrow's broadcast, "are clear. No harm to the young. An exchange. Archon. Your transgression. For our forgiveness. Withdraw your weapon, and we will speak of reparations. But you will not threaten my children." There was a long, cold pause. Then, Morrow laughed. It was a dry, cracking, terrible sound. "Your oaths, your reparations. The price on their heads. Empress. The political leverage of holding the heirs to the Dominion that is a bounty that makes all other oaths obsolete. My oath is to my ledger, and my ledger demands a return." Black energy in the array intensified. "You have 1 minute, Your Majesty," Morrow snarled, "to choose between your pride and your bloodline. Comply or I will fire. I will collapse your Stargate from this side, severing your connection. And we will see if a Starweaver and 4 cubs can survive a null field. I suspect not." The Empress looked at her children. She looked at the weapon. Her face, for the first time, was etched with a cold, divine fury, but also a trace of fear. The weapon was real. The threat was real. She looked at Noah, and Noah, who had been frozen, looked back. She was an Empress. She was a goddess. She was a being of unimaginable power. And she was a mother, trapped. He, on the other hand, was just a cook, and his kitchen was under siege. He looked at the tactical situation. A massive, energy-based weapon, aimed at a massive, energy-based target. It had to be sensor-locked. It had to be guided. He turned away from the Empress. He walked past Arya. He went to the far side of the workshop, to a massive, grime-covered console marked Primary Thermal Recycling. "Noah," Arya said, her voice a strained whisper. "What are you doing? He's a god, and you're going to the plumbing." "He's not a god, Arya," Noah said, his hands flying across the console, his mind racing. "He's just a man with a bigger gun, and his gun needs sensors, Jax." The big mechanic was at his side in an instant. "What? I need you to reverse the flow, not just on the galley exhausts, on everything. I want every ounce of waste heat, every chemical residue, every smell on this entire station vented. Now, right into that blockade's face." Jax's red optic brightened. "A tactical stink bomb. A tactical stew," Noah corrected. Scribe Nye, the small, spherical AI, which had been hiding behind Jax's prosthetic, zipped out. "Master Hart, I am here. The ambiance is terribly overwhelming. So much power. It smells of violets and ozone." "Forget the ambiance," Scribe Noah yelled, pulling open a chemical supply locker filled with old, decaying solvents, rust inhibitors, and industrial cleaners. "I need a recipe for chaos. I want every contradictory, nonsensical, sensor-scrambling molecular compound you can think of. I want to pump a cloud of pure confusion into that nullifier's targeting array." Scribe Nina's holographic face lit up. "Oh, a challenge. May I suggest a base of high-sulfur content lubricant, layered with notes of decaying fruit protein, aerosolized rust, and, ancient synthetic sock." "Perfect," Noah said. He grabbed a barrel of purple, viscous liquid and shoved the intake hose for the recycling system into it. "Jax, hit it." Jax slammed his fist onto the primary reversal switch. With the groan of a dying giant, the station's ancient ventilation system reversed. A hurricane-force wind began to suck at the workshop. "Arya!" Noah yelled over the roar. He looked at her, his face grim, his hands covered in purple slime. "This is going to get their attention. I'm going to do something very stupid, and very loud." Arya stared at him, at this impossible man, covered in grease, facing down a battle fleet and a goddess, and his first instinct was to cook. She walked over to him. She grabbed the front of his stained, slimy tunic, stood on her toes, and kissed him. It was not a gentle kiss. It was fast, desperate, and tasted of ozone, adrenaline, and ancient, synthetic, purple lubricant. "If we live," she said, her voice breathless, her eyes shining. "We talk about sharing a kitchen. If we die, I am blaming your seasoning." She stepped back, raised her pistol, and nodded. "Do it, chef." Noah nodded back, a slow, grim smile on his face. He looked at the Empress. "Your Majesty, I am going to need a distraction. Can you bend the light? Just a little." The Empress Cylindris, ruler of the Mother Star, looked at the human cook. She looked at the filthy console, the purple slime, the grim, insane determination in his eyes. And she smiled, a real, scary, breathtakingly beautiful smile. "I can bend more than light, Weaver Heart." An alarm sounded on Argent Bridge. "Sir," a sensor technician yelled, his face pale. "The station, it's venting a massive, multi-spectrum cloud of I don't know what it is." "Sensors," Morrow snarled. "They're gone, sir. I'm getting readings for burnt sugar ammonia, sulfur decaying proteins, and is that lavender? The nullifier lock is flickering." "Fire," Morrow roared, his face purple. "Fire on the gate, fire through the interference." The nullifier beam, black and hateful, lanced out. It hit the chaotic cloud of chemical soup, and its targeting array stuttered. The beam wavered, its lock on the Stargate broken. "It's not enough," Noah yelled in the workshop. The station was shaking. The beam was still coming, uncontrolled, but still deadly. He looked at his hand. The golden glow was gone, but the feeling of knowledge was still there. He looked at the Empress. She raised her hands. Outside, the plasma storm, which had been raging, listened. The vast, green, angry river of solar wind bent to her will. It became a focused, emerald shield, wrapping around the station. But Noah was not looking at the shield. He was looking at the pipes, the exhaust system, the kitchen he had just built. He shoved his right hand, his blistered, human hand, into the main thermal exhaust manifold. "Here," he whispered. "Let me add a little something." He did not pull this time. He pushed. He reached for the energy. Not the storms, but the kids. The 4, small, blazing blue beacons. He reached for the golden Weaver fire in his own blood. He found the connection. He found the flow. And he pushed it. A torrent of pure, golden white, Star Weaver energy shot from his hand. It did not go into the room. It went into the pipes. It shot into the ventilation system, a river of his power, his intent. It hit the chaotic, purple chemical cloud, and it ignited. It was not an explosion. It was a transmutation. The Empress's green shield of solar wind, Noah's golden river of Weaver fire, and Scribe-9's recipe for molecular chaos. The 3 streams met. They twisted. They harmonized. The purple, junk-filled cloud became the conductor. The combined, impossible wave of green gold, lavender and rust-scented power washed out from the station. It was a symphony of creation and nonsense. It struck Morrow's black null beam. The beam did not shatter. It dissolved. It was unmade. Its complex, hateful, dark energy matrix was torn apart, simultaneously scrambled by molecular chaos and overwritten by the raw, focused, harmonious power of the Empress and the Weaver. The wave did not stop. It washed over the Argent. It washed over the entire consortium fleet. It was not destroyed. It disabled. On the bridge of the Argent, every light, every console, every weapon system died. The ship went dark. The fleet, in an instant, was rendered inert, paralyzed, drifting, dead in the water. Every sensor array was fused, every system overloaded. Their last diagnostic reading a confused, impossible, permanent record of burnt socks and starlight. In the workshop, the roaring wind died. The alarms fell silent. Noah pulled his hand from the manifold. It was just a hand again, blistered, purple, and smoking. The 4 Kitsari children were panting, their blue light dimmed but steady, their faces triumphant. Jax whistled, a long, low sound of pure disbelief. Arya was leaning against the wall, her pistol hanging limply from her hand, her face a mask of shocked, hysterical laughter. The Stargate was stable. Noah Hart, the cook, leaned against the recycling console, his knees weak, his vision graying. He looked across the vast, silent room. Empress Cylindris was looking at him. Her 9 tails of light were a soft, celebratory aurora. And she was, most definitely, smiling. The silence that followed was heavier than the station's hull. The air, scoured of chaos, was thick with the scent of ozone, violets, and the lingering, ghostly aroma of burnt socks. Then, from the perfect, stable disk of the Stargate, the Empress's 2 basalt-armored guards stepped forward. They moved with a silent, fluid grace, their mirrored helmets reflecting the shocked, grease-stained faces of Noah, Arya, and Jax. They walked directly past the Empress, past the children, and stood at the sealed bulkhead to Orbital B. One guard placed a hand on the massive, 1-meter-thick door. The metal hissed as it was superheated, then flowed like water, opening a perfectly circular, molten hole. They stepped through, into the corridor where Archon Morrow was, presumably, still screaming. A moment later, they returned, dragging the Archon between them. His immaculate uniform was scorched, his face a mask of disbelief and sputtering rage. His 2 elite guards were nowhere to be seen, likely unconscious or worse. Morrow was thrown to his knees, his hands bound in a shimmering, dark energy. "This is an act of war," Morrow spat, his voice regaining its venom. The consortium, Empress Cylindris stated, her voice a calm, final chord. "Will be informed of your personal expenditures." Scribe 9, who had been hiding behind a conduit, zipped forward, his holographic eyes wide. "If I may, Your Majesty, I have the receipts." The small AI projected its stolen data into the air, the project-exclusive corridor memos, the fabricated Cora Prime report, the false bank transfers designed to frame Noah, the signature of Archon Morrow on the acceptable losses document, the entire, cold-blooded recipe for murdering 3,000 people, Alara included. "This data," the Empress said, her voice devoid of heat, "has just been transmitted, unencrypted, on all public channels within the Eastern Contact. Your ledger, Archon, is now balanced." Morrow's face went white. He was not just defeated. He was exposed, ruined. His name, his family's name, was now synonymous with mass murder. His silence, as the guards hauled him through the Stargate, was more profound than any scream. The air in the workshop began to warm, the light from the Stargate softening. The plasma storm outside had passed, its fury spent, leaving only the gentle, glittering dust of the debris field. The Empress turned to Noah. She was a being of mythic power, the ruler of a stellar empire. He was a man covered in purple slime, his hand blistered, his heart aching. "Noah Hart," she said, and the name in her mouth sounded like a requiem and an anthem. "The Weaver blood is thin in you." Yet it answered. "You protected the heirs. You cooked." "They were cold," Noah said, his voice hoarse. "They were hungry. It's what I do." "What you do," the Empress said, a small, knowing smile touching her lips, "is what you are. The Mother Star Dominion would honor you. We request your services as chef constellar to the royal household. Arya snorted. Chef. After that? The role is more than you imply, the Empress said, her gaze turning to Arya. Among the Kitsari, the way of the meal is the first doctrine. To provide sustenance is to accept responsibility. To share a table is to forge a treaty. The one who feeds the heirs is the one who teaches them. True leadership is not about power. It is about service. She looked back at Noah. We would have you teach them humanity. Your HFY, as you call it. Your resilience. Your flavor. It was a royal command. It was an escape. It was everything he should have wanted. But all he saw was Alara's face in the scrolling data. I accept, Noah said, his voice quiet, but as strong as the hull. On two conditions. The Empress's eyebrow, a perfect, elegant arch, rose. A human was negotiating with her. First, Noah said, the consortium's trade in high-value biologicals, in stolen assets, ends. Today, the Dominion will use its full, considerable weight to make the trade in any sentient life a Class 1 capital offense. A simple and just correction. The Empress agreed. It is done. Your second condition. A kitchen is not just for royalty, Noah said, his gaze becoming distant, looking past the Empress, past the station, to the 1,000 other dark, cold, hungry outposts just like this one. I want a fund. We'll call it the Warm Meal Fund. Its resources, sponsored by the Dominion, will be dedicated to border world relief. We will build kitchens. We will deliver hot, nutritious, delicious interspecies safe food to the forgotten, the lost, the refugees. No station will ever be as cold and dark as this one was. The Empress was silent for a long moment. You would take a royal appointment, she said, and turn it into a charity for your own, lesser species. Not just mine, Noah said. For all species. That's the point. You want me to teach your kids leadership. Let them see this. Leadership isn't just serving, it's seeing. And you don't get that from a throne. You get it from a stove. A slow, genuine smile spread across Cylindris's face. Chef Constellar Noah Hart, we accept your terms. It is the most excellent recipe. She turned to Arya, who had been watching, her arms crossed, her pistol now holstered. And this warm meal fund. It will require logistics, a trader who knows the routes, one who is not afraid of consortium blockades or a good vintage. Arya's sharp, appraising gaze met the Empress's. It will be expensive, Arya said. All business. The transport costs alone and my rates are not cheap. Your Majesty. The Dominion is prepared to be generous, the Empress replied. Arya nodded. Then I can coordinate it. She looked at Noah, a small, exasperated, and deeply fond smile playing on her lips. Someone has to. You'll be too busy trying to invent a synthetic hope flavor, and you'll probably burn the first batch. I don't burn things, Noah said, offended. The Empress and her guards retreated through the Stargate. The 4 children, now bright-eyed and healthy in the residual glow, ran to Noah first. One by one, they hugged him, a tangle of small limbs and glowing tails. You must visit, Chef Noah, Cinder said. And bring the sesame snacks, Dawn added, sniffing his jacket. We will see you at home, Flicker said, his voice now steady, a prince's voice. They turned and, with a final, bright look, followed their mother into the light, the Stargate, with a sound like a single, perfect bell, folded in on itself and was gone. The workshop was suddenly just a cold, dark, empty room again, smelling of purple slime. Noah, Arya, and Jax stood in the sudden, heavy silence. So, Jax finally rumbled, cracking his massive mechanical knuckles. A chef constellar, huh, fancy. Just a title, Noah said, feeling the exhaustion of 3 years hit him all at once. Well, chef, Arya said, walking over to him. You look like hell. You smell like an industrial accident. And you just declared war on poverty, single-handedly, using soup. It's a start, he murmured. Yeah, it is. She stood in front of him, her gaze soft, all the sharp, merchant captain edges gone. Was the shared kitchen thing serious? I don't know, Noah said honestly. Were you? Maybe. She reached up and brushed a piece of grime from his cheek. But we need ground rules. I'm a logistician, Noah. I like clear terms. He met her gaze. The old, aching guilt for Alara was still there. It would always be there. But for the first time, it was not a cold, empty void. It was a memory. A warm, sad, finite memory. This was something new. All right, he said, his voice gentle. Ground rules. How about love without chains? Arya raised an eyebrow. Poetic. And functional. I like it. She tapped a finger on his chest. And for you, cooking without burning. I told you, he said, a small, real smile forming on his face. I don't burn things. We'll see, she said, and she linked her arm in his. Come on, Chef Constiller. Let's see. Let's just go. Depot Saffron was not the same. Dominion engineers, the silent, basalt-armored types, had repaired it, which meant they had rebuilt it from the hull, up in less than 48 hours. The station was now a gleaming, efficient, and slightly terrifying outpost of Dominion human cooperation. Doc Matron's voice was the first, best change. Her stutter was gone, the logic worm purged. Her voice was now a crisp, pleasant, and deeply grateful alto. My sincere thanks. Master Jax and Scribe Nye, she announced over the new, high-fidelity comms. My core logic has never felt so unviolated. As a reward, I have recalculated your outstanding bar tab. You now owe only 800 credits. See, Jax grunted to Scribe 9, who was happily cataloging the new system. She loves me. And in the galley, his galley, Noah stood alone. It was no longer a greasy, forgotten mess hall. It was a state-of-the-art culinary laboratory. The Dominion had installed new bioforges, a full-spectrum enzyme library, and a synthesizer that could, apparently, replicate a small-batch supernova. For flavoring purposes. But Noah was looking at the wall. Taped to the gleaming, spotless steel was a single, crude drawing. Pebble had left it. It was a drawing, in grease pencil, of a very tall stick figure with a chef's hat, handing a glowing, yellow-scribbled snack to 4 smaller, fox-like stick figures with 9 glowing tails. Pebble had been a bit generous. He was no longer a man in hiding. He was no longer the escaped cook. He looked at his new, spotless counter, at the massive, humming heart of the station's new food supply system. He was a man with a purpose. He was a man with a kitchen. The futures of the children were set. He had received the first comm from the Mother Star. Flicker was in the high observatory, learning to navigate by the true stellar song. Cinder was in the diplomatic chambers, her unique mimicry being honed into the most powerful diplomatic cipher in the Dominion. Pebble, to the horror of the royal mechanics, was insisting on tuning the star drive's thermal valves, and was, infuriatingly, improving their efficiency. And Dawn was in the great library, her perfect scent memory, now the living archive of the Dominion's oldest, most fragile flavor memories. They were learning, and so was he. Noah Hart smiled, the expression still a bit rusty, but genuine. He pulled out a clean bowl. He was a long way from home. But for the first time in 3 years, he felt at home. He was a weaver of warmth, a chef for the lost, and he had a new recipe he was dying to try. The Star Palace of the Dominion was not a building. It was a constellation. It was a cluster of bioorganic spires that hung in a geosynchronous orbit, drawing light and energy from the mother star itself. The corridors were not made of metal, but of a warm, pearl-like substance that pulsed with a faint, internal light. And the air smelled of blooming night flowers and distant, sweet ozone. Noah Hart felt, to put it mildly, deeply underdressed. His new, simple, black and gray chef constellar uniform felt like a child's costume in a place where the air seemed to be wearing robes woven from starlight. Arya, beside him, looked equally uncomfortable, though she hid it better. She had swapped her trader's jacket for a severe, elegant, deep blue diplomatic corps dress, but her hand kept straying to her hip, where her pulse pistol was conspicuously, and probably, for the first time in her adult life, absent. "This place," she muttered, "makes my teeth hum. It's too clean. I keep expecting a welcome brochure and a bill for the atmosphere." "Quiet, both of you," Jax rumbled. The Dominion engineers had taken one look at his obsolete prosthetic and, in what Jax described as 3 days of the best, most terrifying vacation ever, had replaced it with a new one. It was a work of art, fashioned from the same dark, light-bending material as the Imperial Guard's armor, its movements silent, fluid, and capable of, as he'd gleefully discovered, repairing a starship's drive core at the subatomic level. He was, for the first time, wearing a formal mechanic's harness. He looked like a beautifully polished, very angry tank. "We're guests." The thank you banquet was not in a hall, but in a vast, open observatory. One wall was a seamless, non-existent barrier, opening to the full, blazing glory of the mother star. The table was a low, circular platform made of living, moss-like crystal, and the food was a series of aromatic, steaming bowls and platters that Noah himself had spent the last 2 days designing. A frantic, joyous collaboration with the royal kitchen staff. He had introduced them to slow roasting. They had, in turn, shown him how to season with gravitons. Empress Cylindris was there, not on a throne, but sitting on a simple cushion, her 9 tails of light a soft, welcoming aurora around her. The children, Flicker, Cinder, Pebble, and Dawn, were beside her, looking healthy, bright-eyed, and unbearably royal in small, formal robes. "Chef Constellar Noah," the Empress said, her voice the familiar, impossible chord of wind and gravity. She inclined her head. "Merchant Captain Arya. Master Mechanic Jax. You honor our home. Please. Sit. Let us share a meal." Dinner was a blur of new, impossible flavors. A broth that tasted of distant comets and warm, earthly time. A protein, synthesized from starlight, that had the texture of perfect, flaky fish and the smoky char of a grill. It was a conversation held in flavor, a treaty signed with every shared bowl. Finally, as the light from the star outside softened, the Empress rose. She held a small, dark, velvet-lined box. "Noah Hart," she said, and the entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. "You have taken from us a great shame, the terror of our children, and returned it to us as a lesson. In courage, in service, and in resourcefulness." She smiled, a small glance at the now-repaired thermal recycling manifold. "Dominion, my family, is in your debt, a debt that cannot be paid, only acknowledged. We have little to offer a man who can pull caramel from a weapon of war." She opened the box. Inside, on the black velvet, was a small, heavy-looking pendant. It was not a jewel. It was made of a dark, reddish, almost obsidian-like metal, coiled in the shape of a single, swirling flame, wrapped in a perfect, descending spiral. It was ancient, its edges worn smooth by time and touch. "This," she said, "is a sigil, one of the old weavings. It has been dormant for a very long time. It belonged to a friend. We would like you to have it." Noah felt his heart pull. He looked at the simple, dark object. It was not a gift. It was a memory. He reached out. His hand now healed from the blisters, but the faint, golden fire knowledge still sleeping beneath the skin. The moment his fingertips brushed the metal, two things happened. First, the dark, reddish-black metal blazed. It did not get hot. It ignited with the same, molten, kitchen fire gold he had felt in his own palm. The spiral flame pulsed, a slow, steady, living beat. Second, his heart thumped. A hard, sudden jolt in his chest, and the light in the pendant flashed in perfect, absolute synchronicity. Thump flash, thump flash. He picked it up. It was warm, heavy, and it felt like it had always been in his hand. "The blood remembers," the Empress whispered, her violet eyes wide, not with shock, but with a deep, profound confirmation. "It is true." "What is true?" Noah asked, his voice rough. He could not take his eyes off the pulsing, golden light. "That," the Empress said, her voice gentle, "is the sigil of the House of Alanhar, a line of human starweavers from the Old Republic, a line that was allied to my ancestors, long before the consortium was even a thought." "Weaverhar," Noah repeated. "My name is Hart." "Names erode," the Empress said, "like stone in a river. Alanhar Hart, a bloodline, once thought as powerful as any in the galaxy. You, Noah Hart, are the last of them." Noah, Arya, and Jax just stared. "The last show," Noah managed. The Empress's face darkened, her light tails fading to a deep, somber indigo. "There was a war, a trade war, as all the stupidest, most tragic wars are. Your ancestors, the Weavers, stood with the First Dominion. They lost. A rival human faction, obsessed with ledgers and profit and galactic monopoly, hunted them, trapped them, blamed them for a series of unfortunate incidents and structural failures they themselves had orchestrated." Noah's blood ran cold. A rival faction. "A house name, long since buried," the Empress continued, her voice a low, dangerous hum. "A name that has, through centuries, rebranded itself, modernized and sanitized, but whose core recipe has never, ever changed. The name of the family that destroyed your ancestors was Morrow." The air left Noah's lungs. It was not a coincidence. It was not just a job. It was destiny. A sick, twisted blood feud, centuries old, that had found him, a simple cook, in a greasy depot at the edge of the galaxy. He felt a white-hot, blinding rage. "And you," he said, his voice a low, shaking whisper, his eyes locking with the Empress's. "You knew." "I suspected," the Empress said, her gaze unflinching. She would not lie to him. Not now. "You used me," he whispered. "No," she said, her voice sharp, but not defensive. "I trusted you. I did not know the depth of Morrow's personal corruption. I did not know about Cora Prime, or your Alara. That was his own, modern atrocity. His own ugly hand, repeating the gestures of his ancestors. I knew only that the scent of your bloodline, the faint, golden echo of Alanhar, was on the wind." "The scent," he repeated, hollow. "The way of the meal," she said, "is also the way of the universe. Everything leaves a trace, a flavor. I sensed yours. So faint. A memory of a hope, and I knew the heirs to my line were in danger. That the old, dark appetite of the Morrow line was hunting them." She stepped closer. "So yes, Noah Hart. I nudged. I rerouted a trade ship your Arya off her designated path. I sent her to a forgotten depot where I sensed you were hiding. I set the table. I trusted that the scent of family, of children in need, would call to the last, lost weaver. I did not know Morrow would be there. I did not know about his crime. I trusted that when the meal was served, your true nature would awaken. Noah stood there, the golden sigil pulsing in his hand. He was a pawn, a piece in a millennia-long chess game. He had been set up. His grief, his exile, his pain had all been used. He looked at Arya. She was pale, her hand now clutching Jax's new, metal arm. He thought of Alara. He thought of her laugh. He thought of the fire. He thought of the 3,000 souls Morrow had called acceptable losses. He thought of the original victims, the ancestors of his own bloodline, hunted, framed, and destroyed by another Morrow, 1,000 years ago. His rage, the white-hot, blind fury, it cooled. It did not vanish. It solidified. It became a cold, dense, perfect, and purposeful thing. He was not a pawn. He was a chef. And the Empress had just handed him the kitchen. He looked at her, his eyes clear. "Hey, Archon Morrow, where is he?" "In a holding cell," the Empress said, "awaiting judgment." "No," Noah said, his voice flat. "Not judgment, not yours, and not mine. He doesn't get a quiet, royal execution. He doesn't get revenge killing." He looked at the Empress, his gaze as unflinching as hers. "He gets justice, the real kind. His family has been denying the galaxy for 1,000 years. I want a trial, a public, interstellar, open records trial. I want our data, the Cora Prime data, submitted as evidence. And I want your data, the ancient war data, the original project-exclusive corridor made public. All of it. I want the entire universe to see the Morrow family recipe, from start to finish." He took a deep breath. "And reparations. Not for me. Not just for Cora Prime victims. For all of them. For the weavers they hunted. For the families they destroyed. For 1,000 years of bad business. I want the Warm Meal Fund expanded, endowed, permanently, by the seized assets of the Morrow line." Arya let out a low, slow whistle. "Damn, Hart. You don't just cook, you barbecue." Noah looked at Arya, and for the first time he smiled, a real, tired, but complete smile. "So," Arya said, a playful, sharp grin returning to her face as she walked over to him. "Let me get this straight. You're the secret, long-lost flavor royalty of the entire galaxy." Noah looked at the pulsing, golden sigil in his hand. He looked at the Empress. He looked at the 4 beaming children. He tucked the sigil into his simple, gray uniform pocket. "No," Noah Hart said. "I'm just the guy who happened to be stirring the pot at exactly the right time." The Empress Cylindris laughed, a real, bright, chiming sound that made the starlight outside seem to dance. "Then let us all stir the pot," she said. She raised her hands. "A new Kitchen Star Covenant. A law, henceforth any major political ruling, any treaty, any declaration by the Star Throne must be accompanied by a day of service. The entire court, myself included, will spend 1 full day in a public kitchen, at a relief camp, serving, so that we never forget who we are cooking for." It was a proclamation that would, in time, change the very fabric of galactic politics. But for now, it was just a promise. The 4 children, who had been listening, their faces a mask of adult seriousness, suddenly broke. They ran to him, a blur of robes and happy, glowing tails. Flicker, as a senior, faced him. Chef Constellar Noah Hart, Weaver Hart, Senkella. "Senkella," Noah asked. "Our sent father," Cinder whispered, beaming. "The one who named us with flavor, sesame safe, cinnamon danger." "We ask that you accept us," Flicker said, his voice formal, but his eyes shining. "As your godchildren by the old ways, as you are ours, to teach and to feed. Noah looked at the four, small, impossible, wonderful faces. He eyed the Empress, his new boss. He looked at Jax, his new, terrifyingly armed mechanic. He looked at Arya, his partner, his family. He knelt, so he was eye to eye with them. "I accept," he said, his voice thick. He thought of his new kitchen, back on the new, gleaming Depot Saffron. He thought of the first official menu for the Warm Meal Fund. He thought of the first dish he would make, as the Senkela of the Kitsari and the Chef Constellar of the Dominion. "The first menu," he said, his voice quiet. "The very first recipe we all make, we'll call it home." The final image was not at Star Palace. It was weeks later. The new kitchen on Depot Saffron was a place of warm, glorious, fragrant chaos. The Warm Meal Fund was in full swing. Scribe Nye was zipping through the air, happily dictating a complex, 32-step recipe for a synthetic protein goulash to a frantic-looking, new, human trainee. Jax was using his new, delicate, micro-laser welder arm to perfectly, and angrily, brûler the top of a casserole. Arya's ship, the Stray Flavor, was docked, visible through the viewport, unloading tons of real, earth-grown potatoes and grain. Her first official donation to the fund. And in the middle of it all was Noah. He was not wearing a royal robe. He was wearing his simple, gray and black chef's tunic, a clean white apron tied around his waist. The golden, weaver sigil pulsed, faintly, warmly, from his pocket. The four children were there, a small, personal Stargate shimmering in the corner of the kitchen, on a surprise inspection visit. Pebble was, of course, tuning the primary soup vat's heating coil. "It's losing heat, Noah, by 0.004%. Cinder was taking an order from a hungry-looking freighter captain. Flicker was studying a star chart. And Dawn was at Noah's side. Her eyes closed, sniffing a new spice he had just invented. She said, her tiny nose twitching. "A little more hope, and less nostalgia." Noah chuckled and adjusted the enzyme drip. He looked up. Through the viewport, beyond Arya's ship, a distant, new starstorm was gathering. A beautiful, silent, and faraway spiral of green and gold, lacing the dark. Arya walked in, stealing a piece of roasted potato from a tray. She leaned against him, her arm looped through his, following his gaze. "Thinking about the old days?" she asked, her voice soft. Noah looked at the storm. He looked at the bustling, loud, warm, chaotic kitchen. He looked at his new, impossible, chosen family. He turned to the massive, simmering soup pot and picked up his ladle. He gave it a single, slow, satisfying stir. "No," he said, his voice quiet and complete. "It's finally warm enough."